Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be breaking down the WSL transfer window and what clubs have been able to do so far, here on She Scores Bangers. Summer is always an extremely fun period for fans as they're able to see what their clubs have been able to make in terms of new transfers, new players, which players are being let go, and just an overall new feel of what the roster is going to look like for the upcoming season. Now, the transfer window has not been concluded just yet, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get to see some big bombshells or big signings take place on deadline day, but we are 90% done with a lot of the signings that have been made. A lot of the clubs, I assume, are done signing new players and are very content with how their squad looks like. A big question that I'd love to think about and wonder on is what makes a good transfer window? Is it letting go of unwanted players? Is it bringing in youth and developing them? Is it bringing in veterans and experience? Or is it bringing in multiple players for a certain position to have a ton of backups? Or is it a combination of everything that's been mentioned that makes a good transfer window? It's important to realize that this question is not an easy one to answer because each club has their own plan. They each have their own budget of spending, which is a huge talk in women's football. Does that team have, let's say, a 5-year plan where they need to bring in youth and kind of work on those so that in 5 years' time they are at the top of the table? Or is it a team that wants to make sure they can go far in the Champions League, or a team that is working to clinch a Champions League spot? So it really does vary in how you're able to say, yes, this club had the best transfer window. We're going to move through the clubs in an alphabetical order. Starting off with Arsenal, they have made the least amount of signings this summer window so far and have been able to let go of 9 players that were present in the last season's roster. This included Tobin Heath finishing off her contract and heading back into the NWSL, Victoria Schneiderback, who was on loan on Spurs last season, also leaving and announcing her retirement. Defender Anna Patton going on loan for the season with Aston Villa. Denmark defender Simone Boy also heading back to Denmark. Aussie goalkeeper Lydia Williams heading to France and signing a deal with PSG. Kira Flannery and Alex Hennessy both heading over to West Ham United. Now the 3 signings, which are actually technically 2 signings. Lena Hurting, which they reportedly spent at least £250,000 on from Juventus, along with American goalkeeper Kaylin from Koge. And then the reported 3rd transfer was Kim Little finishing off her loan in the NWSL. But because it was a loan that ended and she returned back to Arsenal, it was reported as a transfer. But it's not a transfer. So Arsenal has only been able to bring in 2 new players. The biggest takeaway of what Arsenal has been really able to accomplish and do is keep their starting 11, keep that deep bench that they already have. They renewed Steph Catley, Caitlin Forbes, and Viviana's Minimus contract, which are 3 big players and were a very prominent role in last year's season. Lena Hurting is a very versatile forward that I think is going to surprise some people in the WSL. She can play on the wings, she can play up top on the 9 role. It's almost like Arsenal has made 3 forward signings when it's really just Lena Hurting, but because she can play in any forward position, she's comfortable starting anywhere in the front 3. Their backline looks to be pretty stable. They have a few options for fullbacks. In the middle, obviously, Lotta, Leah Williamson, and Rafa look dynamite. I think if they're able to stay healthy, Arsenal's not going to have many problems in the back. As we know and have been watching, defensive midfielders or good defensive midfielders are not easy to come. They're not easy to find. Obviously, it would not hurt to bring in another defensive midfielder. So Arsenal played the game pretty well and kind of sending out the players that they don't need anymore and keeping those that they want, renewing the players that they need to keep. Moving on to Aston Villa, in my opinion, they probably have had the best transfer window, and I know everybody's going to jump in and say Chelsea. I get it. Aston Villa for the past, I want to say 2 or 3 years, have looked like a very good team in terms of they have a lot of potential, they have a lot of talent, they also have a great manager, but have always looked like to kind of lack that final piece or that final flair, the final touch. I can't really pinpoint what it is that they have missed. There were some games that they were winning or they were holding on a tie and we just conceded in the last 20 minutes. They've been able to bring in 7 new players, and the best part about all of this is they've only paid for 1. That is very good business. That's very good board management. Natasha Harding, Anna Liette, Kenzie Daly, who I think is going to be a very, very important role in their midfield, all on free agency. The only fee that they had to pay, which again was also undisclosed, is Rachel Daly. They released 4 players into free agency, and so there's a few paychecks not having to be paid. There were a few teams, especially kind of in the mid-table, that were lacking to score goals. They were lacking to have a very rough kind of forward-minded player. And Rachel Daly is exactly that. They got the player that they really need to elevate everything up a few standards. Moving on to Brighton, they actually lost a few important players. They lost a total of 10 players in general, so it's no surprise that they lost at least 4 very good quality players, 4 of which usually that start in the starting 11. Dutch duo Anissa Kagman and Danique Kurgendijk both departed on an undisclosed fee. There were also a set of midfielders and defenders that were released. Ellie Brazil, who spent the last 4 years with Brighton, moved over to Spurs. Obviously, the biggest loss for them has been Maya Letitia over from Manchester United, who actually left on a free agency, so they did not get a penny for her. How have they been able to replace these losses? I actually wouldn't say in a very well-mannered approach. Just a few days ago, they were able to acquire Georgia Fox from Chelsea on loan. They also welcomed back Rebecca Stott. Brighton is managed by Hope Powell, which is a manager who has done wonders for the game and is not one to be underestimated. I just really hope she's able to pull one or two more very, very good signings before the window closes. Chelsea has been able to send some shockwaves with some of the signings that they've been able to pull off, and honestly, props to them for pulling some of these signings off. Before the end of last season, there was a few departures already being announced, so going into the summer, everybody knew, and Chelsea obviously expected that they were going to have a very busy window because of the departures that were already announced. But from the get-go, they made sure that they were signing big players. The biggest one for me has been Buchanan. They also are the biggest spenders of the window so far, which is not surprising to anybody, I don't think. They got Yves Perisset, who is a very, very versatile kind of defender, fullback from Bordeaux, from France. Katrina, quite a big loss for West Ham, I would say. Winger and Serbian midfielder, both coming over from the Swedish league. Both of them were actually linked to Jonas, who had previously worked with them in Sweden. I mean, there's not much more to say other than this has been so far a very, very good transfer window for them. They replaced the midfielders that they lost. They also got some versatile backline defenders that can also kind of push forward and play maybe like on the wing back position, maybe even push up to the wingers. But in the forward line, they're not missing any more talent or any more skill. They already have plenty of it up there. Moving on to Everton, who have lost a fair amount of players this window. They, however, were also able to make some pretty good business, bringing in 3 new Danish players. Youngster Jess Spark on loan from Manchester City, who is going to be absolutely dynamite. I am not going to be surprised if she finishes being their player of the season. Like previously mentioned, Kenzie Dolly joined Aston Villa, as well as Sandy McClever moving over to Manchester City on an undisclosed fee as well. Overall, not a bad window at all. They lost a fair amount of players, but were able to kind of bring back some new players to replace those holes. The 3 new Danish players already have chemistry playing together on the national team, and they won't struggle to play together on club level. Leicester City, who were kind of dragged into the relegation battle last time with Birmingham City, lost more players than they have been able to bring in. They lost some pretty good players and have not been able to bring in any solid players to replace that. The biggest one you could say is Josie Green, who joins in from Spurs, but is it enough to do better than last season? Is it enough to make sure you're not in that relegation zone? I'm not quite sure. Fear if they're not able to bring in 1 or 2 very good players, they might be brought back into that relegation battle again this season. Liverpool, the newly promoted WSL team, I'm so excited to see them kick it off with the big dogs. They released a few players that they were not making much use of. They also made sure to renew the contracts that they needed, specifically their captain's contract. They brought back Shanice van der Selden, which I'm so delighted to see her back in the WSL. She has worked with them previously. She is very much Dutch, but it's almost like Liverpool runs through her blood. When you see that woman talk about the club or play for the club, even in the last spell that she had, it's like Liverpool runs through her, which is it's great to see the passion come out of the player like that. They also required Jilly from West Ham, again, very, very good experienced player, and it's been a pretty good window for them. I think they already have a good solid roster to begin with anyway. They've gotten the players that they want to work with, some very experienced WSL players. Manchester City now. Manchester City is the team who has lost the most amount of starting 11 players. Ellen White has retired. Caroline Weir moving over to Real Madrid. Lucia Bronze going to Barcelona. They obviously had let go Janine Becker earlier on in this year. With that being said, they worked very hard and diligently to replace those players. So a quick fact, if you don't know, Gareth Taylor has actually been knocked out of the Champions League 5 consecutive times by Spanish clubs. And so his approach this transfer window was to bring in as many players from the Spanish league into his team, which he successfully brought in 3. So bravo on that. Jokes aside, though, very good to see some players come in from the Spanish league into the WSL. That doesn't happen too often. They also brought in as a youngster, Mary Fowler, who is an absolute tank up front. The other side of Manchester also made some very, very good signings and were able to send 4 very promising players on loan. And the players that they didn't send on loan, they made sure they got some money for and sold. The last one and most recent one, they were able to bring in a French defender from Atletico Madrid, also on an undisclosed fee. All of the signings are absolutely top-notch. On top of that, they kept the players that they were mainly using, especially Toon and Russo, Katie Zellum, those very, very big players they made sure to keep. Casey Stoney will be very happy with where her former club is doing right now. Moving quickly over to Reading, who lost the least amount of players this season, only losing one player, and that player actually retired. So they haven't sent anybody on loan, they haven't released anybody, they also haven't sold anybody and got any money for, which is very interesting because all the players that have joined in, 6 of them, have all been bought. All the players that they brought in to play in different leagues. The only WSL experienced player is Diane Caldwell from Manchester United. They got 3 different defenders, which is very good because we're going to be seeing a ton of rotation. They did have a few issues in the defense line in general last season, and that's something that I think they want to work on. They've also got a defender, forward, and midfielder, so they've pretty much gone every single position that they need. North London club numero 2, Spurs, had a pretty solid transfer window as well. They were able to get Drew Spence on a free agency from Chelsea, Ellie Brazil from Brighton, like previously mentioned. Very, very big Ramona Pittsburgher on free agency, who is a German tank in the middle. They also lost Clemeron in the midfield, which was a very crucial player for them, as well as Josie Green, as previously mentioned, to Leicester City. Lastly, West Ham United, who were usually known to have quite a very high squad turnover. Like previously mentioned, they were able to get some of the Arsenal players. The biggest one in my eyes is Lisa Evans and Hale Hussein. Both of them were free agency, as well as Alex Hennessy. The French forward Vivian from Bayern Munich, a really, really good technical player that is going to be scoring a ton of goals for them. So lost Skutova and Lyon, like previously mentioned, as well as Julie Flattery, their captain. They did pretty well last season. I don't see why they are not going to match that form or probably even go higher this time around as well. Again, like previously mentioned, the transfer window has not ended just yet, so I'm kind of excited to see if there's going to be any bombshells to take place in the next few days. Comment down below your thoughts on what you think this transfer window has been for some of these clubs. What do you think has been the best signing? Which club has been able to do the best signings? Which club has been able to do the best business? I want to hear it all down in the comment section. As always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube and follow us on Twitter. I will see you later.